It is now my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Alex Kelloff, who is running for the Democratic nomination for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District to unseat the bread sandwich himself, Jeff Hurd. Alex is a 4th-generation Coloradan and businessman whose family's roots in CD3 date back to 1893, when his family immigrated to Trinidad, Colorado. Early in his career, Alex worked with the United States government as an IT and network specialist. This work included holding a top-secret clearance while being embedded with the U.S. Marine Corps at the Pentagon and Quantico. For his work there, he became the first civilian contractor to be awarded a USMC Certificate of Commendation from the Commanding General of the Recruitment Command. While working full-time, he earned a master's degree at night and on the weekends from Johns Hopkins University, where he graduated with a perfect grade point average and completed his thesis in China. Thereafter, he pivoted to business, working for telecom firms globally. This experience led him to business school in France, where he earned his MBA at INSEAD, the business school of the world. In 2002, before his MBA, he helped found Armada Skis, writing the business plan and helping to raise the initial capital. After his MBA, Alex spent 14 years at Jefferies, leading a $20 billion plus of transactions in the telecoms industry. These transactions supported many early-stage companies who used the capital to build critical infrastructure. He went on to help start SDC Capital Partners, where he played a key role in starting and operating companies to develop internet infrastructure. So it's your fault. On top of that, Alex has been a lifelong outdoorsman, enjoying mountain biking, skiing, snowmobiling, camping, hunting, and fishing. Alex Kelloff, welcome to the Get More Smarter podcast.
Thanks a lot, Ian and Jason. I'd like to meet that guy. That guy sounds interesting.
Sounds like a very interesting fellow. Well, after we're done with this podcast, we'll send you the recording and you can tell us how you think you did. So before we get into the campaign, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family's Colorado roots. You've been here. You guys have been here since 1893.
That's right. Yeah, that's in 1893. My great-grandfather and his brothers immigrated, like many families at the time, to dig coal because that's where the good jobs were. And then my grandfather was born in Aguilar, Colorado, a small town north of Trinidad in 1906. He also dug coal. And eventually they migrated, the whole family sort of migrated west across southern Colorado and became small business people for the last few generations.
I understand that your family owns like the oldest grocery store somewhere down in the valley. Is that right?
Well, my grandfather started it in 1933 during the Great Depression. He was a consummate entrepreneur after digging coal and decided, he wanted to start a small business. So he started in the San Luis Valley, and they had multiple stores across southern Colorado.
What was it called?
It was called Kelloff's Food Markets.
Okay.
And then he ran it for decades before my uncle took it over and ran it until the early 2000s. And then my uncle retired. They sold off the last of the stores. So the stores ran for roughly 70 years. But now they once my uncle retired, they closed them down, sold them off.
Did the store, do they still exist in some form now?
They don't now, no.
They're just gone.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, but grocery store is a hard business.
Yeah.
Thin margins, and when you have Safeway and Walmart moving into these areas, it became hard over time. But they had a great 70-year run.
Huh. That's really interesting. We ask all our guests this also because we don't have a lot of Republican guests. Why are you a Democrat? Why, at some point in your life, you decided I'm a Democrat? Why?
Well, part of it, when I think back over the last, couple of decades since I've been voting, I struggle to think if I voted for a Republican. And so I've gravitated as the Republicans in my mind have moved farther and farther to the right and focused on issues that I think are hurting the American people at large. I've really gravitated more to the Democratic Party. And that's not to say that we as Democrats, particularly at the national level, don't have our own issues and problems. But I just feel like the Republican Party has left many people across this U.S. that used to stand for traditional conservative. I don't think with the Trump administration and those that call themselves largely Republicans today are really in any shape or form what the traditional Republican Party was.
But aside from what the Republicans do wrong, which we could talk about for a long time, is there particular a particular policy or reason that you felt like Democrats represented you better?
Sure. I think by and large, it's the compassion for the average man and woman in America and ensuring that all of us have the ability to live out and pursue the American dream. And I think the Democratic Party is just much better aligned to do that and fulfill that mission than other, political affiliations out there.
So you've never served in elected office before, as far as we know. But you're
not.
running,
As far as you
for
know.
Congress in 2026, and I can tell you at least secondhand that it is a job that does not have many rewards and brings many challenges to one's life.
Understood.
What made you decide to run for Congress in 2026?
So I grew up, my dad always said, do well so you can do good, or do good so you can do well. And I had a 30+ year career in business, specifically in the telecommunications industry. I was fortunate to have done well there. And I feel like it's time to give back and do good where I can. And after the elections in November of 2024, when Trump was reelected, it was a real wake-up call for me. So I decided at that point that I needed to get involved. I was critically concerned about the direction he would take this country. And here we are, 13, 14 months after he took office. And this is way worse than I even imagined back then. But I made the decision at that time to get involved. And at the time, I wasn't sure what that looked like. But the more I reflected on my family's history in this district and that I could step away from my successful business career, that's what I chose to do, to get involved and run for Congress.
You were running unopposed for the Democratic nomination until a couple of weeks ago when a guy named Dwayne Romero, who's been elected in the Aspen area, worked for John Hickenlooper's administration, suddenly jumped into the primary. Were you surprised that he joined the race so late?
Well, look, I don't show up for work late. I started 11 months ago, this campaign, to do the hard work. I've been to all 27 counties of the district. I've met with thousands and thousands of constituents. I've held over 120 events to learn and listen from them. My opponent entered the race 5 hours before the deadline. So,
yeah, better than 4 hours before the deadline, I guess.
Who's counting, right?
Yeah. Tell us the basic fundamental question then for Democratic primary voters out there. Why you and not Dwayne Romero?
Well, I'm very clear on what I'm running on, and that's informed by 11 months of hard work, crisscrossing the district, as I just mentioned. So I'm very clear on the things I'm running on, which it will take to defeat whoever the Republican is in the general election. So I think I'm very well positioned. I'm best positioned. When you look at the caucus and assembly process throughout the 27 districts that just occurred, the amount of delegates that I got supporting me versus my opponent, I think it's like 2-1. And in the 3 largest counties, it was over 2.5-1. So I think that's one of many data points, if you will, or reflections about the momentum that we've built. And our plan is to carry that momentum into the general election because we're very clear as to what we're running on and what it's going to take to beat the Republican to flip the seat blue November 3rd in the midterms.
So we're recording this on Friday the 20th, and you have had a few of your county assemblies, but you still have to have your multi-county congressional district assembly, right?
Yes.
When is that? Is that on the 27th?
Yes, it's 1 week from today on the 27th.
Okay, very good. So 1 week from today, you will actually have the assembly that nominates candidates, and if you keep your delegates and Mr. Romero gets 30% or more, you're both on the primary ballot this June. But if he gets below 30%, then it's just you. Do we have that right?
You are correct, yes.
Very good. So, you didn't expect this primary. I don't think we did either. And 4 or 5 hours, whatever it was beforehand, he files, he gets in, and now he may or may not be on the ballot. But let's just ask a different question sort of atmospherically. Are you at all worried that a competitive primary, let's say you have one, will hurt the eventual nominee's chances in November against Jeff Hurd? Or do you think primaries help sharpen candidates and campaigns?
I feel like I've been at it for 11 months. So I feel like, we've been sharpening our message. Our message, our platform has been informed again by talking to these thousands and thousands of constituents and putting in the hard work. So sure, I'm competition, I think, always hones competitors, but I also feel like I'm very, very well prepared to take our momentum into the general election with a very strong platform that it's been informed by that 11 months of hard work.
Well, tell us a little bit about that platform. What have you learned from your constituents? Give us sort of like the top 3 planks or whatever, however you consider that.
Yeah, a little bit of background on the platform. As I said, it's been informed by the 11 months of hard work, but it's also been informed by my roots in the district. And we started off by talking really about my father's side of the family, over 130 years in this district, kind of all across southern Colorado. And while my grandfather and then my uncle ran grocery stores, the broader family ran movie theaters, general stores, furniture stores. I mean, you name it. These were consummate small business people for over a century in the district. But not only that, my mom went to high school in Grand Junction, and then she went on to Mesa State Junior College at the time. Now it's CMU. Her dad, my grandfather, was also a small businessman. He worked as a carpenter and a tile layer. He helped actually build the first house in Vail, Colorado in 1962, and then lived in the Roaring Fork Valley and worked on a lot of mountain homes and businesses and that sort of thing. So my whole history comes from small business people. And then, of course, my professional experience was 30 years in business, much of which was creating small businesses that led to creating, thousands of good jobs, often trades and union jobs. So I say that because my platform is very much focused on economic growth in this district. There are not a lot of large employers, save for like the hospital systems, the education system. I'm very focused on helping to create good jobs through small business formation. I think these jobs, my experience has been in building physical assets in the telecoms industry, bringing the internet to rural areas and closing the digital divide. So I've built things. And I think some of what I'm focused on, small business formation, building things, building utility infrastructure, building our water infrastructure, building our transportation infrastructure. These will create good jobs, economic growth, and it will lower the cost of living for all of us. We need more affordable housing. I'm also focused on healthcare for all. Healthcare costs have gotten way out of hand, and I think there are specific solutions there we need to implement immediately upon taking Congress back after the midterms. I'm also focused on protecting our public lands and keeping our water in the district. The ag industry, the outdoor rec industries, those are 2 of our largest economic drivers, critically dependent on water, especially with the dry winter we've had this year, the worst on record. And finally, upholding the rule of law. No more illegal ICE actions, no more unconstitutional executive orders, no more illegal tariffs. And finally, just making sure that Congress gets back to fulfilling its constitutional obligation as a co-equal branch of government. So those are the things I'm very much focused on.
So you spend a lot of time in your platform, and I'm grateful for that explanation, talking about economic development, small businesses, and I mean, under the umbrella, essentially, of capitalism, right? Capitalism seems to be a little bit embattled these days inside the Democratic Party. You have a sort of a rising democratic socialist movement. You have all sorts of people dumping on capitalism as an idea. I guess I'm wondering, like, how do you react to that as a Democrat running for office when you hear those things? And do you think that, the American capitalism that your family engaged in the 1800s and the early 1900s, leading to the American dream that was able to give you the opportunities you had, is still available to people? Or what would you do to change that system if not?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I do think it's available. I do think that American dream and in the path to the American dream is still available, but there are some critical things that we need to do. And some of the more nuanced and specifics are things like we need to reform our tax code, right? We need to incentivize small business. We need to ensure that healthcare is affordable. I was talking to a CEO of a manufacturing company in Montrose who's, I think, identifies as a Republican, but he was telling me utility costs are out of hand, and his biggest cost of production are utility costs because they do a lot of aluminum extrusion in manufacturing, and he can't attract the workers that he has the demand for in Montrose because housing is too expensive. So there are a number of things that we need to address as Democrats in terms of cost of living and affordability so that small business people, entrepreneurs can establish their businesses, they can live where they work, and they can thrive over time. So I think a lot of that has to do with cost of living. A lot of that has to do with we've had the consolidation of small banks in these communities that have now become large banks who don't know the communities that well to then lend to the entrepreneurs that are going to create those small businesses. So it's a multifaceted problem, but I have hope that we can fix these things and address them through hard work.
There's a bit of a rift in the Democratic Party these days with the far left pushing more of the, I hate to say centrist, but for lack of a better label, Democrats. And part of that is because in Colorado, Republicans have been so inept that the real battle is on the Democratic side. We've been asking everybody on our show where they think voters in their area on the Democratic side are looking for their nominee to land in this particular race. Do they want a more of a hardcore lefty? What are the vibes you're getting out there?
Well, I think to win the general election in Congressional District 3, 50% roughly, it may even be a little bit more than 50%, are registered unaffiliated. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're independents, but I think broadly they think more independently. And I've seen recent national polls that say a majority of Americans identify as independents. So I think to win in this district, you have to reach out to the broader populace.
But what about the Democrats right now in your area? How are they? What's the vibe you're getting there?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. One is those who are engaged because they've been affected negatively by Jeff Hurd and this administration's policies. So very specifically, his vote for the One Big Beautiful Bill, notwithstanding that he made promises during his campaign initially that he would not support legislation that cuts Medicaid. He did exactly that with his vote for the One Big Beautiful Bill.
But he wrote some letters about
Well, he wrote some letters. He wrote some letters, gloss it over and, try and make it go away. I mean, the other thing I would say, and sorry for the long-winded answer, but I want to be specific. The first piece of legislation that Jeff Hurd proposed as a congressman was called the Productive Public Lands Act. And this was the forerunner to what Senator Mike Lee and others in Congress tried to get in the One Big Beautiful Bill to sell off and lease off our public lands. And this Productive Public Lands Act, that was Jeff Hurd's proposal, came straight out of Project 2025. Now, thank God it didn't make it into the One Big Beautiful Bill because of the nonpartisan, bipartisan pushbacks from Democrats and Republicans alike. So these are two issues, cuts to Medicaid and assaults on our public lands, which are both critically important to this district. CD3 has the largest beneficiaries of Medicaid because of our rural hospitals. We also have some of the largest amounts in terms of geographic, space of public lands. So the people I hear from and the Democrats, those that are being affected by those things Jeff Hurd has supported have come out vocally. So there's that constituency. And then there's the constituency that's very involved, groups like Indivisible, which are very progressive, and they care about certain things like we all do. And those are the two constituencies within the Democratic Party I hear most from right now.
Is that more anti-Trump or more about we want a broader vision for what comes next?
Great question. I think it's both. Those aren't mutually exclusive.
Sure.
People are very concerned about ICE actions. They're very concerned about healthcare. I talked to a woman from Montezuma County the other day. She was paying $400 a month, which was already stretching her budget for healthcare. Once the premium tax credits sunsetted because they weren't renewed under the One Big Beautiful Bill, her premiums jumped from $400 a month to $2,000 a month. You know what?
Christ.
She doesn't have health care anymore.
Right,
She
of
can't
course
afford that, obviously.
It's
A
that or
5x
food.
increase.
Right.
We've talked over the years a lot about the 3rd Congressional District because it's a very strange district in that it's so large geographically. It's very hard to figure out a paid media strategy because, in southern parts of the district, you have to buy Albuquerque TV, for example. What have you learned about the district as you've traveled around, and in terms of like, how have you adjusted how you campaign in that big of an area?
That is a great question and something I thought a lot about when I was launching the campaign and getting into it early. And so this is a benefit, I think, from having run for 11 months, right? Because you learn and you pivot, you adapt, you understand what's working. I very much, because it's a very expensive district to run in, I very much focused on a grassroots campaign. So again, getting to all 27 counties. The last county I visited just before Christmas of last year was Moffett County. I was up in Craig, Colorado, meeting with coal miners from the Trapper mine that are being affected because the mine's being closed and the Craig station is.
Or is it being
not.
opened? Or is it being? Yeah.
Well, that's a whole different. we can talk about that. But the point being is, you got to meet people where they're at. And Jeff Hurd is deeply unpopular. We ran a poll 6-7 weeks ago, and his unfavorability rating came back at a net negative 40% unfavorable.
Whoa!
And the reason is, and by the way, we were surprised about that. The reason is because he doesn't meet with his constituents. He doesn't do in-person town halls. He often doesn't reply to emails or phone calls or what have you. And this cuts across both. I hear from Republicans alike that they're disappointed, and certainly those unaffiliated that we talked about. So back to like, how do you prosecute a campaign? You need to get out there. You need to meet with the people. You need to meet with them where they're at and listen and learn from them. And that goes all the way from Dinosaur to Junction to Delta, to Montrose, to Durango, to the San Luis Valley, and all the way over to Pueblo and La Junta, which is 90 miles west of the Kansas border. So it's huge and it's super diverse, but you got to get out there and meet people and learn and listen to them where they're at.
Are there any examples that come to mind of things you did in the first month or so of your campaign that you wouldn't do again? You're like, well, that didn't work. That was, this district, it doesn't make sense to do what I did that way. I mean, maybe there aren't, but I'm curious.
I think I'd flip it around maybe and say I would have doubled down more probably on social media because you can more cost effectively reach people that way. Probably. But all of it, this is a bit timing, right? Because I've definitely found much, much more momentum coming into the new year than the off-cycle year of 2025. People just are more invested now, more interested in what's going to happen this year. But I think so. I would have doubled down more on social media and tried to build more of a grassroots following earlier on than maybe we did.
So we unfortunately have to ask you about a post on a website called Truth Social, the social media site owned by the President of the United States, which is apparently like his press release factory or something. It's extremely long and boring, so we will not go through all of it. But as you alluded to earlier, and as listeners likely know, Trump re-endorsed after unendorsing your opponent, Jeff Hurd, after endorsing his insane primary opponent, Hope Scheppelman, after Hurd voted against Trump on the Canadian tariffs, and then now Trump claims to have talked with Hope Scheppelman and her husband and then reversed himself and re-endorsed Hurd. It's very confusing, but what do you make of this journey that the president and your opponent have been on lately?
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for writing such a long and rambling. It's great. It's great for our campaign. I think it shows and reflects that Trump is deeply concerned about Jeff Hurd's position, and I think that's a reflection of the hard work we've been doing for the last 11 months. So it was. I mean, I can't wait to create some memes off of how long of a post that was, and I think it also mentioned that now Hope Sheppelman and maybe even her husband will have jobs in this administration.
Are they going to become the shield and sword of the Americas or something? Is there another fake Kristi Noem job available?
Noem, I guess.
Yeah, that's great.
Look, I was, when I saw that this morning, I guess I wasn't that surprised. Just, obviously Trump is a very chaotic president, and that's part of the problem with this administration. But I'm heartened by the fact that they must be worried that we've been doing the hard work. We're showing up to work early, putting in the time. And I view that as part of the reflection of they're worried about the campaign we're running. So I look
there's
forward
no
to
reason
seeing Jeff in the general election.
There is no reason they would have done this if they thought that Sheppelman could have beat you. That's my sort of bottom line on this whole thing. It's interesting.
Yeah, I just laughed because of how long and rambling that was. But
well, when he originally unendorsed Hurd like a month ago, it felt like a spur of the moment thing. I think he was really angry about the Supreme Court ruling against the tariffs, and it felt like he was just kind of lashing out, and maybe hadn't thought about it. I don't know. It's impossible to say with that guy.
Yeah, one other thing I would say is when he unendorsed Hurd, whatever that was, however many weeks ago, that put this race on the national map. I got a lot of calls inbound. We saw fundraising tick up because people were starting to become aware. So these are good things for this race, and I'm because I've seen this morning fundraising's picking up for us. We've got, interest from folks like yourselves, the New York Times. I spoke to this morning. They just put out and quoted me in the New York Times earlier today. So it's helpful. It puts this race on the national map, and we see that from the inbound interest we're getting.
Well, I'm not going to ask you to go through how you're going to prosecute a case against Jeff Hurd, because you've gone through a lot of that already. If you're the nominee for the Democrats, what do you think Hurd is going to say about you?
Well, I think they'll lie, they'll tell mistruths, they'll spread disinformation, misinformation, calling me a leftist liberal. I mean, just again, look at my history, look at my family's history and roots. I mean, I met with a 85-year-old Republican in the San Luis Valley not that long ago, and he knew my family. And I said to him, I hope I can earn your vote. And he looked at me and said, I've been a lifelong Republican. I've never voted for a Democrat. He's 85. But he looked at me and he said, it would be really hard for me to vote against a Kelloff. Well, that's because he knew my family. He did business with them in the San Luis Valley. And I think they will try and spread lies and misinformation and disinformation like they do. But I'll just double down on what I've been doing. I've been getting out there, meeting with the people, and Jeff Hurd's not doing that. And I don't expect that he's going to change his tune. He'll keep his head down. He'll make excuses and say, well, Speaker Johnson said it's not safe for me to go out and meet with people. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be out there and I'll be spreading the truth. So.
You said you got a pollback recently that showed him with a negative 40 approval rating, or favorability rather. Any other tidbits from that research you can share with us?
Well, look, I mean, the other thing I was surprised about, and this probably works in his favor, and I don't mind telling the truth, right? Like, his name recognition was actually quite high. I suspect maybe that's because he's drawn the ire of Donald Trump and now he's back in his favor. The fact that he came after Lauren Boebert, maybe these things
it surprised me too.
Yeah, and so he had good name recognition, and that's something we need to continue to prosecute the case against and build name recognition, leverage the Kelloff name that was known throughout southern Colorado for generations. I'm also been very heartened by the fact that I have dozens of endorsements including the last Democrat who served in this seat, John Salazar, who gave me his endorsement after we spent some time together, but also because he knew my family and did business with my family. So again, we just need to keep doing the hard work. I think we can overcome Jeff Hurd's name recognition. We certainly, hopefully, can pull more favorability ratings than he can by being out there learning and listening from everyone.
Well, you mentioned regretting not investing earlier in social media, so we'll give you a chance to share with our listeners. Where can they find you online if they want to get involved in the campaign?
Thank you. So the website is simply Alex Kelloff, AlexKelloff, 2 L's, 2 F's.com. You can volunteer, you can donate, you can get involved there. We're on all social media platforms. Well, we're not on True Social, but that's By the way, last I checked, the public company that holds True Social is almost bankrupt. So we'll see how longer that.
Well, he has that effect on companies typically.
Yeah,
and countries.
He does. I mean, having declared bankruptcy 6 times, he does have that effect. But our social media handles are all Alex Kelloff, CO for Colorado, and you can find us on any social media platform there. So please come check us out and follow there.
Well, go ahead and find Alex Kelloff, Kelloff, out there on the internet at Alex Kelloff, CO. Alex Kelloff, Democratic candidate for the 3rd Congressional District, for the privilege and pleasure of taking on the bread sandwich himself this November. Thank you so much for coming on the Get More Smarter podcast, man. It was really fun to talk to you.
Thanks, Ian and Jason. Really appreciate it. That was fun. I hope we can do it again.